Welcome to the HBCU Diversity and Tech panel. My name is Brent Swinton, and I am happy to serve as the Vice President for Institutional Advancement at the Bowie State University. It is my distinct pleasure to serve as your moderator this morning, coming to you live and direct from beautiful Bowie, Maryland, halfway between Washington, D.C. and Baltimore. Today, we've got a great panel for you featuring our friends from Accenture and Farm Credit Services of America. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Terrianne Lord from Accenture.
Good morning, Brent. How are you?
Good morning.
I'm really excited to be here. So it's great to meet with you and the other panelists. I'm looking forward to our discussion today.
Thank you. I'd also like to introduce our audience to our friend from Farm Credit Bureau, Scott Binder.
Hi, Brent. Glad to be here and excited for this discussion today.
Wonderful. So before we get into our questions, I thought I would give both Scott and Terrianne an opportunity to introduce themselves to our audience. Terrianne, tell us about your current role at Accenture and maybe a little bit of what brought you here to this role today.
Absolutely. So I have been with Accenture a little over 3 years now. I came by way of an acquisition. So at Accenture, I serve as the Salesforce practice lead. And I also work with our federal agencies in terms of transforming their business processes and their movement to the cloud. In my role, I have been in the IT technology industry for over 20 plus years now, and specializing in cloud transformation since 2005.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And then your co-panelist, Scott Binder. Let's hear a little bit from Scott about how he has come to serve Farm Credit Services of America.
Yeah, well, I actually have some similar roots, it sounds like. I actually began my career as a CPA at Arthur Andersen and then worked for 23 years in the cable television and telecom industry with Time Warner and Comcast. And 8 years ago, I had the chance to come to operate in one of the Farm Credit entities and have been just joined Farm Credit Services of America in the last 9 months, and really excited to be here in Omaha after a long stint in Denver.
Wow, that sounds exciting. So let me pitch the first question. Terrianne, how has Accenture's external engagement changed or maybe adjusted under the pandemic when it comes to partnering within the tech industry and on HBCU recruiting or engagement opportunities?
Yeah. No, it's been a tough time for everyone, right? Because of COVID-19, it just disrupted our channels, and it forced us to think and operate much differently than we did before. Accenture is really proud of our long-standing partnerships with 7 HBCUs. So we partner with Clark Atlanta University, Spelman, Morehouse, Howard University, Hampton University, Prairie View A&M, and St. Philip's College. And because of COVID, a lot of students lost their internship opportunities. However, at Accenture, we were able to pivot to a very digital experience. So we use a lot of our intelligent technologies to make sure we enable human interactions to ensure that these relationships continue to grow and through virtual times. So we did things like a 3-day virtual workshop where we hosted HBCU students. We got over 550 applications across 32 different HBCUs, and we accepted and hosted over 165 of those students virtually. So we focused on acknowledging how to work in the technology field with Accenture, our job opportunities. We got those students to engage with Accenture leaders. We provide skilling opportunities, and all of this was done virtually. So we're going to continue to host virtual information sessions for HBCU students, just helping them to grow. We're going to continue focusing on building those deep and early relationships with HBCU students because we believe it's so critical to our strategy and our growth. And due to COVID, we've just shifted. We're not going to change the way that we've engaged. We're going to continue to do that in a virtual manner unless things change, and empower HBC students and in all of these undergraduate, annual student leadership, and provide the professional development that they need. We just want to make sure that we ensure continued progress, and we're going to do that as aggressively as possible.
Wow. Yeah. Working here at an HBCU myself, it's good to hear of that commitment. Scott, what about you? How has your company's engagement been impacted by COVID-19?
Yeah. Well, I think everybody kind of went home in March in many cases. And so we went
Right.
from, knowing how to use Zoom, and we certainly did it, but it certainly wasn't something that most of us did for several hours every day. And so that certainly changed the way we engage with each other. We also had interns this summer, and we're excited to engage them. With all of us working remotely, we thought it was a great opportunity both for them to learn how we were working, but also in some cases, the next generation of workers has skills that not all of our teammates have, and we had the chance to learn from them as well. So I think that was very valuable for us both ways. What's I think unique for us is that we're in the middle of a transformation, and I thought it was interesting as I heard Terrianne's role. We just went through a Salesforce transition in our organization in the last 6 months, and we did that virtually. We had to do it virtually. It wasn't something, the implementation of that wasn't something that we could do, face to face as we would have otherwise done it. And so I think that, cloud technologies are changing the way a lot of us work, and I think mobility and technology will continue to redefine the relationships that we have with our customers. Historically, those were relationships nurtured, whether it was on an urban farm or a traditional farm, they were nurtured by face to face contact. But that's not the way financial services will be delivered exclusively for sure in the future. And it's already began to change. And so we're in the midst of that transformation. And we look forward to continuing to work with HBCU students to help us engage in that transformation and help lead us to a very different future than the way we've operated for the last 100 years.
Great, great. So, Scott, let me follow up on that because you mentioned that you've been with Farm Credit Services of America for about 8 years. As you look at how the company has evolved during your tenure and maybe for a little while beforehand, you mentioned how the technologies have evolved recently in response to COVID. Um, could you speak a little bit more about how perhaps the evolving technology has changed the type of career of opportunities that are available for HBCU students?
Yeah. So just a little bit about Farm Credit. We have about 15,000 employees across the country, and we're the eighth largest financial institution based on assets. So a lot of people haven't heard of Farm Credit unless they are in agriculture, right? And so um, what in the entity, and there's several entities across Farm Credit. The entity that I'm in, that's based in Omaha and serves 5 states, we have about 2,000 employees. And of those 2,000 employees, 475 are technology jobs. So to say that we're a financial services company, I think is a little bit misleading because I would say that, almost a fifth of our, or excuse me, almost a quarter of our employees are solely focused on our technology platform. And I think that really speaks to where we see the future going, and that growth in that part of our business, that was 250 people a decade ago, and it's almost double that today. So, and I think the other thing that's happened is what the other changes that are happening are that cloud-based technologies are where we're moving. We used to have a lot of more internal program developed systems. And as quick as technology changes, it's hard to maintain and grow and be nimble enough to do that. So it's more about integration of cloud-based technologies today than it was building our own, say 15 years ago. And I wasn't here for that, but that's one of the reasons that we're making the changes that we're making today.
Wow, that's you're right. These changes are now coming more and more rapidly.
Yes.
So Carrie, from your vantage point within Accenture, what are the opportunities that you see for expanding the technological knowledge, and how easy is it for your organization to pivot to new and emerging technologies?
Yeah, so Accenture we are the technology leader. We've got technologies across different platforms, and our ability to pivot to the new because of how agile we are as a company is really important. And that's one of the reasons we're leaders in the marketplace. And how we've applied that in terms of pivoting is we actually partnered with St. Philip's College in San Antonio, and they were the first higher education institution, an HBCU, that our San Antonio workforce development team collaborated with as part of our impact hiring initiative. So we actually have a San Antonio Technology Delivery Center, and we're beefing up in terms of the education level and the opportunities for some of our HBCUs in that area. So we took on 37 students. We provided them with work experience, training, mentorships in the IT space, and 20% of them have been hired at Accenture to date. So that's just one example of how we're partnering with HBCUs. Another way that we're doing that is with some of our development programs for minority business owners. We have actually partnered to help grow from a technology perspective, just in our corporate community, as well as helping our HBCU students learn and grow in the new. So what we're looking to do is not just educate and hire in the technology space, but create growth opportunities that will last for the duration of their careers.
Great. It's not lost on me that both of your responses have also included the input of young people in helping your organization learn and pivot, as well as you teaching them. So that sounds like great synergy. Scott, so similar to the students across the country, the pandemic has forced businesses across the country to adjust how they operate and how they serve customers. Can you describe some of the adjustments that the Farm Credit Services of America has made and the technology career that may have resulted, you know,
Hmm.
as a result of the very recent pivot?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, how we work will be forever changed, right? The flexibility that our company has historically given to teammates was really about, look, we tried to allow people, if they wanted to coach a little league baseball team, to give that freedom, right? I think freedom means something different to every single employee. It's not, okay, here we're going to write rules to do a particular thing. I think freedom today means being able to do the work where you work, when you work, at on whatever device and in whatever way that makes sense in your life. And an example is I got up early this morning, went to the health club, and I'm typing out email to somebody on the East Coast at 5:30 in the morning Central Time. And that work is just as valid, just as important, and just as timely as what I do at my desk 3 hours later. That's quite different than when I started my career. Work was a place I went. And just as we have teammates working that way, we've got to enable customers to do that. And so, one of the major focuses for us today is being sure that we are creating the simplicity of interaction for customers to interact with us in the way that they see fit 24/7, and that some people will still want that face-to-face interaction, and
Mhm.
other people are going to want to jump on at 1:30 in the morning when they wake up and think of something and be able to transact business with us. So I think that the opportunities that we see for teammates right now, and the reason we're investing so heavily in our technology platform, is because we need people to help us make that transition. And so we do have a lot of focus in that area. And the roles, there's project management outside of hard technology roles. There's also project management roles, because managing the many parts of a Salesforce implementation or a new lending platform implementation that we're going through, it's not just the technology. It certainly matters, but it's also about integrating all the business aspects and the different departmental pieces that have to happen, credit approval and the lending and sales side. It's not just technology, it's making all of the technology work across the business. So
You know, you just reminded me that I missed my workout this morning, and here you are actually conducting business during your workout. So that's a sign from above that I need to get on that. But it's very true what you mentioned about how the evolution of work being a place where you used to just go to, and you're able to put it down at 5 o'clock, and that is not the future. Now, Terry and Scott, both of you have articulated very well how you are changing some of the business processes at your place of work. As an HBCU administrator, I'm also hearing from you about what types of skill sets, activities, or just characteristics that you look for from our graduates in your recruiting lens. I'll pitch that back to Terrianne.
Terrianne. Yeah, so what we're seeing is that there's just a different skill set that is needed now, just in the way that we work, right? And one of the things you've seen or we've noticed is that in the HBC community, educational institution, there is a bit of a lag behind from a technology perspective, and there's a digital gap and sometimes a digital desert. And we're working to find ways to kind of close that gap to bring the goodness that the HBCU educational institutions provide to help our HBCU students be very competitive. So we're
Mm-hmm.
working with things like helping institutions form like their digital playbook, how to get back to school using those technologies to work virtually, be it Zoom or Teams or what have you, how to collaborate in a virtual environment, how to bring those skills offline, online, in order to be effective. So it's about helping them grow based on a change in the environment, but still use those skills when we go back to normal to help us all still be successful.
All right. And Scott, what do you think about that? What are some of the skill sets or characteristics that your organization would be looking for in a recruiting situation?
Sure. I'd encourage people to be aggressively curious. And so lots of times we're put in situations, and those situations don't always lend to our greatest strengths, right? And so I started my career as a CPA, and I wasn't that good at it. But I think being able to acknowledge what you're good at, and then being really curious about developing those skills. And so that's what we look for, is people that want to grow and learn different things. And I think in a world where we're increasingly specific in our knowledge, generalist knowledge is actually really attractive to our company. People that have learned different aspects of our business, maybe you come in through a technology lens, but to the degree you can learn other aspects of the business, that is super valuable. And we're actually investing in internal programs in early career teammates to do that, so that we don't have people that only have a deep technology knowledge or have a deep
Mhm.
financial knowledge or have a deep HR knowledge, but to try and round people out so that they get a broader perspective and an opportunity to understand how the business fits together.
Yeah, and I would say too, just to add on to that, is to also to be persistent, be resilient, and just to be agile, not as a methodology, but to be agile because many of us have had different shifts in our career. So as long as you have that quest for knowledge and that resilience and that curiosity, like Scott says, but yet be able to pivot yourself, I think those are some of the fundamental skill sets that will help you successful inside or outside of technology, whatever your career choice happens to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, in that same vein, just yesterday, my Twitter feed was just blowing up because of a statement that an executive made at another bank, not our good friends at Truist, but just another organization that doesn't have it together like Truist does. But the statement was something to the effect of, um, I can't, I can't recruit black talent because I don't, I don't know where to look. I don't see any. And I'm paraphrasing poorly, but I'm sure you saw the headlines. Um, and I'm curious, based on your commentary today and all of the innovations and just the ways that you are approaching this problem, What would you advise the CEO of another organization who says that I just can't recruit Black talent? What would you say to them? Maybe just between us and everybody watching.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to jump in first. My answer would be you can't look in the same places. You have to be intentional about, and I think with all that's happened in our country over the last several months, we've got to all stop and ask ourselves, are we going back to do the same things we've always done, or are we willing to say, are there other networks, other relationships that we need to build proactively and intentionally, as opposed to we post a job and then who's going to apply? Because then, if that's what you would do, you're going to get more people from the same network you already have. And so I think it really comes down to companies intentionally saying, I'm going to go look and recruit and spend time and it, you're going to catch the same kind of fish. And I'm sorry for this horrible analogy, but if you go back to the same place all the time, you're going to catch the same. And I think we've got to be very intentional as an organization about saying, what networks do we build today that will create candidates with unique perspectives and points of view over the next 10 years? And you've got to do that today to build that over for the future. And you can't wait and try and do it when you're recruiting, because it doesn't work that way.
Wow.
I, I would agree. The statement itself just reveals just so much of a growth that that organization has to have, and it's incredible that we're still having this discussion in terms of you don't know where to go given our current climate and where we are. There has to be diversity of thought, there has to be diversity of action, and if you continue to do the exact same things and expect different results, then there's a saying that goes with that too. So that my advice to that CEO would be, you probably need to have a different team around you that will help you see and understand different perspectives so that you can put a plan in place to recruit the best talent, and not in the same places that you always have been. So my advice would be, you need to diversify your group of advisors or the group of people that are around you, because they're not implementing the right strategies, and that needs to pivot quickly. And to call Scott and I, because you can probably tell you all the HBCUs you should be working with right now.
Oh, there you go. There you go. And maybe look at what Truist is doing as well across the board. So are there any other topics that you'd like to cover? Any other specialties at Accenture or Farm Credit Services that we could take a moment to highlight?
I just want to parrot again. Terrianne said, and I think it's exactly right. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there and share what your desires and what you want are. It's not a world anymore where when you begin your career, here's your desk, go do this really defined work. We're looking for people that are persistent, that want to grow, that will do things maybe that other people aren't real excited about doing, and to have that opportunity to grow. And sometimes I got my first leadership opportunity moving from Denver to a small town in Kentucky, and I'd never been to Kentucky before. It wasn't that I wanted to go there. It's that's the one place I could get the leadership opportunity I wanted. And my point is, I think that ended up serving me well, but it wasn't necessarily a straight line to the opportunities I wanted in my career. And I'd frankly been denied a bunch of times. So don't be afraid about being denied. Be persistent about what you want and keep going after it. So
Awesome, awesome. And yeah, don't I like what you're saying about don't be afraid to move to another region of the country or just put yourself out there. That is what being young is about.
yeah.
And I would add to that, I agree. Scott and I are very much in alignment today, but I would say in addition to that, when you finally find that path, make it wide enough so others can follow, right? Because we pour into each other, into your development and your growth. So that has to also pay forward a little bit and just make your path wide enough so that you can help others as well, and focus on your persistence, your resilience, and understand that your career is going to last you a lifetime. And if you learn the skills that can help you pivot to the new, you'll be incredibly successful. So focus on the holistic picture. So, and find a company that helps make you truly human, right? You should bring the best of who you are at any point.
Yeah.
Wow. I think that's a great note to end on, but I have to tell you, I have so enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much, Terrianne and Scott, for your time and such deep insights on just how your corporations engage with HBCUs and strategies for people who might want to join your organizations. This has been awesome. So I'm going to close to let our audience know that we want them to please stay tuned for what's coming up next. And I'm very excited for this. It's a fireside chat featuring Robinhood CEO Wes Moore, who will be chatting with Truist Head of Sales and Clients Experience Strategy, Thomas Ransom. I'm a fan of both of those gentlemen, and so I know it's going to be a great conversation. What we'll do now is take a 10-minute break, and the fireside chat will begin at 10:30. But in the meantime, I want to thank you all for your time and thank Terrianne and Scott again for such a great conversation. I've been Brent Swinton, your facilitator. Have a great rest of the day.